with the registration status of the party PFF, and of course it gives you a loop into the power of the constitution. Different institutes do have their own constitutions, their own laws that they must be abiding by, but to see that the Electoral Commission of Uganda is continuously delaying the full registration or the formal registration of PFF as a party to participate actively in the next electoral cycle come 2026 general elections, it begs the question, why are they delaying, even when by rule of law they are past the time frames that they give themselves as an Electoral Commission to be able to meet all the requirements, rectify, verify all the requirements for any given party to be then formally registered and recognized by the Electoral Commission as one that is able to democratically participate in any politics, the democracy, as well as good governance of a country. And so I'm going to ask one of my guests this morning, Aaron Kiza, to be able to speak into that before we get into the subject matter of the day. Good morning to you, Councillor.
Good morning.
It's good to see you in one piece.
Yeah.
And I know it's been over a month since you got your bail out, and privileged to be having you on this table yet again. But from what we have seen this morning that is happening at the Katonga faction, what do you make of the importance of the constitution, obedience to the rule of law as we are evolving into yet another cycle?
It is symptomatic of the general degradation of rule of law in the country, engineered by government officials and institutions. The Electoral Commission knows very well the importance of political parties in their central role in the governance of this country, and in any civilized society. They know that the political parties empower citizens. They are serious platforms through which citizens can access power, through which citizens can participate in decision-making regarding national issues, and that they are supposed to support citizens to organize rather than leave citizens on their own or frustrate efforts that citizens have dreamt up and engineered to organize themselves. The least the Electoral Commission can do is frustrate a political party. The relevance of the Electoral Commission depends on, among other things, the existence of vibrant political parties that can vie and compete for power in this country. So by undermining PFF or any other political party, then they are undermining themselves, they are undermining their mandate, and they are frustrating the rule of law in this country.
All right, thank you so much. We do have Talit Ayita, who's also very, very, good at observing, especially from a security lens of view, but also from a strategy point of view. Could this be a strategy by maybe a bigger power to frustrate yet another party participating in the electoral cycle?
Yeah, thanks, and good morning. You raise a very pertinent question at a time of our electoral cycle, which is actually crucial, because one thing about election cycles is that they are bound by time. So time becomes both an impact and a consequence. Now you see, world over, democracy per se, in terms of its philosophical foundations, its principles, is basically a negotiated product. Now, any activity, any process that is seen as trying to stifle the process of negotiation is definitely a process that would easily be seen as anti-people. The question then would be, what is the motivation? Where is it coming from? I think for me, that is a much more obvious question, but which may not necessarily fetch answers as obvious. Because you see, just like my learned friend Aaron points out, the Electoral Commission, just like any other institutions of government in the process of governance, are seen as the wheels, that oil a democracy or oil good governance. Now, when they begin to startle, when they begin to frog leap, then there is a problem. Because among its cardinal intent should be that we are having a vibrant democracy. Because it's not a player. It plays more of a refereeing role, I think it is this philosopher Hegel who argues that the business of government is so serious a business to leave it to government alone. So that is why the architecture of democracy envisages that there will be some kind of mechanism of pull and push. And here you have parties being representatives of civic thought. This is where the aspirations of people are consolidated. So for anybody, and for any reason, to begin to put blockage, even just for the part of registration, because the law is there. Mm-hmm. That means, but anybody can aspire to register a party. Mm-hmm. So I find that the Electoral Commission, in this particular case, has put itself in a very awkward position, and I really think they should work as hard as possible to try and get their hands clean. All right. Before we actually get into this kind of train jam that we are beginning to see.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Tulit, which informs the backbone of our discussion this morning, the role of the judiciary in upholding democratic principles. A democratic society is known for its vital characteristics like freedom of speech, expression, minority rights, free and fair elections, access to information, administration of justice, and of course, the rule of law. Now, this morning, we dig deep to understand the vital link between the judiciary and the democracy of our country, Uganda, as we are driving towards yet another electoral political cycle or battlefield for that matter. As we all know that democracy is actually on the hinge of the executive, the judiciary and the legislative combined together, different roles but all together do ensure good governance of a country. As we open up this conversation this morning, our first question would be to assess the judiciary as it stands today with the things that happened between 2021 and 2025. It begs the question, what has been the performance of the judiciary of Uganda? I'll start with you, Kiza. And that's to point out both positive and negative.
So, it's a very tricky question to ask a practicing lawyer what the performance of the judiciary is. But for my areas of interest, the judiciary's performance leaves a lot to be desired. We need a stronger judiciary that deals better with torture, with abductions, with illegal detentions, and also we need a judiciary that stands up to threats of the most powerful men. Unfortunately, there are men who are always threatening the judiciary. To their credit, the ladies have not been threatened. Yeah, we know the two men who are on rampage threatening judges and citizens and everyone else. So we need the judiciary that speaks back to them at an administrative level, because the judiciary has both the judicial function and an administrative level whereby they are headed by the Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, the Principal Judge. I still insist that we need more performance from the leaders of judiciary, verbally pushing back against people who are threatening the rights of Ugandans before they even give judicial decisions that are correct, that they militate against illegal detentions. So that is where the area of improvement is. When you look at the reports of the judiciary about their own performance, they conveniently omit assessments that they have criteria of rule of law, of human rights. They are into statistics. They are into backlog, which are very important issues. But the most important issues of the day is the dignity of Ugandans, and that needs to be reflected in the reports of the judiciary, and also it needs to be reflected in the decisions that come out from the judiciary. It must be noted that the judiciary, even although it is an institution and must be assessed as such, there are individuals in that institution. So while the judiciary is not doing well, there are a few good judges who are still sticking their neck out for freedoms and the liberties of Ugandans. And to those judges, we honor them and we salute them and we credit them. But to the vast majority who are being intimidated successfully, who are fearing, they should know that the common man, the street vendor, the ordinary resident, the person in a dungeon in Mbuya, in Chereka, in any of these safe houses, is looking up to them, is waiting for their word, their order, in order to be set free, or in order for their detention to be legal, to be made legal. So it's a heavy burden to carry in this era, whereby militarism has really taken grip on our society. But the judges must remember that even in an Amin era, there were judges standing up for liberty, and they didn't die. And that era passed. The dictators are nowhere now, but some of these judges are still alive. So they need more courage, they need more strength, and of course the most important element, ingredient of a judge as an individual and the judiciary generally is integrity. Yeah, we need to put integrity front and center of what we do as judges.
Okay. All right. You mentioned three crucial points there: torture, abductions, and illegal detentions that have become the story of the day whenever we actually get into an electoral cycle. Now, before, in the past, it used to be as close to the election as possible, but it's no longer the case now. All time through, we are seeing these being the realities that people face on a daily basis. Today, you wake up with your person, and by evening, they're nowhere to be seen. And police will tell you they don't know where they are. All the other security organs will tell you we are not aware of this person missing, and they'll push you away. And you find solace nowhere as a citizen of Uganda, which begs the question on the state of human rights in Uganda. And given the fact that it is on the rise in affiliation to politics, it begs the question, how is the judiciary, in your assessment, to lead? How is the judiciary handling that for us as a country? Yes, of course, there's the rule of law. Yes, of course, they're doing things by the book. But at the same time, what feeling do you get of how they are actually handling some of these issues?
Yeah, that is a fairly compounded question. Of course, it is true. If asked whether the judiciary actually has a role it plays in the protection of democracy, definitely it does, and such a crucial role. There are a number of things that I would itemize, but maybe like the first three very important ones is one, the upholding the rule of law. The other would be protecting fundamental rights, like Aaron points out, because if you say look at our constitution, comparatively to other progressive constitutions around the world, the hallmark of our constitution is the Bill of Rights. You know, and it gives you this thinking. If you looked at our Bill of Rights and read it alongside the preamble of our Constitution, and again, Aaron points out the dark era we know about and we've always talked about, you know, right from post-independence, then Amin, and then the Obote II, and also what the NRM today has evolved, has put across as its argument, you know, for staging a revolution, if you like, or a rebellion that then ushers in the government we see today. So these are really, the protection of fundamental rights is the hallmark of any constitution. Because you're talking about people. And if it were that the role of government, other than anything else, is to protect the weak, then that way you need to judge it. I saw a story, I think at the close of this week, of an 80-year-old woman. I don't know if the age was correct, but she is in prison now, and she was driven out of her marital home in Kibanja, or piece of land, that she had been occupying with her late husband for the last 50 years. And the facts, the brief facts of the matter, as stated, at least in the newspaper, if they are correct, is that she is being charged with illegal trespass.
For 50 years.
So, you know, there's no longer a question of whether there is something strange in the room. There's definitely a stranger in the room. It's not business as usual. For whatever standard, you know, and I really want to plead out my heart for the senior members of the judiciary, especially the administration. Really, a case like this one does not only wreck the heart, but it is just something not to write home about. Now, if you have cases like this, how worse can it get when it comes to political contestation? Remember, all the time, our reading should be correct, and especially people who are managing key institutions that facilitate processes of government and democracy, like the Judiciary, the Electoral Commission. I don't want to go back into, you know, the very veneer, you know, scholastic arguments of what the judiciary is, what does it do, because that is for a given. We now have a judiciary. It is here. So we are looking at its performance. For me, this case tells a lot. The other thing I'd want to point is that, again, just like Aaron said, there is need for judicial activism. There is no way any member of the bench, whether the higher benches or the lower benches, they are first of all Ugandan citizens before they are judicial officers. And if anybody has watched what is going on, particularly in the continent of Africa, given the history of our politics, you would be quick to know, or quick to remind yourself to read books like The Animal Farm or Lord of the Flies. You just never know when you are victim or when you are perpetrator. Because we seem to be playing in the same stage, but in different oscillations of time. Look at the case, look at what has just happened in Ivory Coast. Let's borrow, these are examples that are not so far. Right now, the main opposition leader in the Ivorian state has been denied opportunity to register to run for presidency.
It's a pity you've gone very far when we have Tanzania closer here.
No, let me just first, you know, it looks like the edges here are now difficult to talk about. Let me first talk about, so, and what is it about? Citizenship. This man is a career, I think, finance manager, and at some point, at the peak of his life, even Ivory Coast was celebrating their citizen, you know, heading one of the key financial institutions in France. He is now a turned politician. Recently, he comes back and expresses interest. I think he denounced his French citizenship, I think in 2023 or something like that. Well, the courts just ruled that, well, he did, but it was rather late. So he's been cut off. Now, for me, it's not even this man. We are talking about aspirations, collective aspirations. Because by the time a leader comes up, means he's a leader of a people. So how, just look at the court quashing, you know, the interest of millions of Ivorians just at the altar of the election. What consequence does it have? Okay,
let's bring the examples back home. I think for us here as a country, a most recent case of Eddie Mutwe being bent by many citizens and law scholars, among many citing, of course, the perspectives of human rights abuse and the mixed interpretations of the law, as the example that you have shared with us, Aaron. We get into an intensified political season yet again, with cases of public figures such as Eddie Mutwe. Now, if Eddie Mutwe is a public figure and he's facing such a wrath, imagine the unknown figures that are facing far much more wrath than Eddie Mutwe. You see police initially stating that they don't know his whereabouts, later on confirmation through a social media platform. You do have the CDF confirming that he has custody of the man and that he's teaching him Runyankore. We also the impact of the Runyankore, the video that went viral when he was being presented in the Masaka court. And it begs the question, where do we draw the line, and who's meant to draw the line to ensure that there's protection of the Constitution, there's observancy of the Constitution, especially as far as the judiciary is concerned?
It is the judiciary itself. It's the responsibility of every judicial officer, where they are operating from, to ensure that they do not condemn torture, that their conduct of court business does not fertilize the continuation of torture. For example, once a tortured Ugandan is before you as a court official, you are supposed to release them to a hospital, to release them to order their hospitalization, not their incarceration. That is a simple. And also, you are not supposed to be party of proceedings of tortured people. Either you ground them or refer them to the High Court if you think you can't handle. So individual judicial officers have to do things, have to act in a way, have to make decisions that distance themselves from torture that is happening. Because we have an unfortunate situation whereby judicial officers, some of them, behave as though they are part of the machinery of torture, which starts in the military, and they bring them into police to clear, and then to court, and then to prison. That someone must break that chain, and the only person who can do that is the judiciary. But it's not the judiciary's work alone. It is also for police. Police needs to arrest the person who is threatening Ugandans, intimidating Ugandans, and torturing them. They know him. He has confessed. Why hasn't the police not arrested him? They have power. So we have a problem. But it's not just police. The president of this country is sleeping on the job. Why can't he rein in on the CDF? Why can't he fire him? Why can't he bring all this mess to an end? Because you can't have someone literally tweeting torture threats, and he's a CDF, and you're a president, and you just see giving the rhetoric of discipline democracy when you cannot discipline even your own family members, you cannot discipline your own immediate appointees. So these lies have to stop, and it starts with the president. The judiciary has a role, the police has a role, and ordinary citizens have a role to reject this and all with all that is available to them, whether it's the vote, whether it is their voices, and so on and so forth.
Kiza, in the realities that we speak of, the roles are there, they're well stipulated, but those are not the realities on ground. And therefore, what should Ugandans expect moving forward? Because we still have a long way to 2026 elections happening, and there's a lot more that is yet to happen and unfold between now and then. Or where should Ugandans are asking themselves, then where should we go if we are running to the judiciary and it's holding us ransom for our own very freedom?
I'm not sure I know where to tell them to go, because the judiciary is what we have. Just continue going to this judiciary as is, and pressure it to be better. Hold it accountable. The judiciary should also be condemned when they make wrong decision, or when they condone torture like we are doing now. We just need more voices calling them out. They are not completely impervious to public opinion. They actually, some of them at least listen, and all of them at some point will listen. If we can build this into a crescendo, eventually they will listen. No one wants to be isolated, no one wants to be ostracized, and it is our right to call them out.
Okay.
To say that you are doing a poor job. To you, judicial officer, this is very unfortunate. We need to engage more other institutions that are the Human Rights Commission, the Judicial Service Commission, to ensure that we actually put our faces, our bodies on the line in complaining about how all government organs work, including the judiciary. If you are not filing a complaint before the Judicial Service Commission, then why are you grumbling? Don't grumble quietly. Name the judicial officer who is errant, state the problem that they are doing, the injury they are visiting on you, and publicize it. Let's name and shame the errant judicial officers.
Okay.
Let's call out their conduct. Because unless we get another judiciary, we have to deal with this one as it is.
What do you make of how the Minister of Constitutional Affairs actually responded, issuing out a letter condemning that recent act of Eddie Mutwe, even also the Human Rights Commission coming out and issuing a letter with quite a number of directives? Are these institutions empowered enough to actually maybe cause some sort of revolt?
No, they are not in ideal situation. They are not empowered enough. I know they don't have enough resources, financial support from government, that I know for sure, and the government doesn't want them to do their work. But they have repeated to do that work, and I was pleasantly surprised by the good performance of the Human Rights Commission in the case of Eddie Mutwe. That's what we expect them to do. We don't expect them to do miracles or to actually physically lift Eddie Mutwe from detention. We want them to exercise the powers that the law gives them, which in this case they do, and for which we applaud them. The issue of Mao writing a letter, of course, he can do more than letter writing now that he's part of government, but even that letter is a good starting point, because the first letter he has written of that sort, I think. So Mao, thank you, but do more. We expect much more from you, but that's good. The letter itself is not a problem. At an attitudinal level, at the signaling level, it's good. It is some work. We have not seen it from Mao before. Now it has come, but we are saying do much more. All right.
We're being joined by Honorable Kasimire. You're most welcome, and it's good to have you with us, as he'll be joining us in this discussion. Tolit, I know that you do have some reactions and some post comments on what Aaron has mentioned.
Yeah, of course, I do agree with a lot that Aaron says, and I don't want to repeat some of the things he has already pointed out, because centrally he calls for more activism. The only other thing that I probably would like to add, and is a dimension that I seem to see from a strategic perspective, is that I think we need to open more fronts. There is a point of departure that has happened and we have missed. The new president, Bobi Wine, the other day was quoted in the press as saying that he seems to see that there is not much pressure coming from the Western capitals, and some people have been dismissal about this call, but we need to realize that actually we are living in a global dispensation, and we are sort of one part but a neat element of the global world. look at just on Saturday, there were about over 20, almost 21 leaders, European leaders, assembled in Ukraine, in Kyiv. And if you look at the number of meetings and initiatives that the Western capitals have attempted to have put forward as a way to put pressure on Ukraine, that is commendable. But we need to see the same, you know, in the sub-Saharan sphere, because we are part of this global world, you know. The point of departure I want to talk about, and that many people don't seem to be seeing, is the arrival of China in the scene. Actually, I want to put this boldly, and it can be contested. But you know, the truth of the matter is that actual human rights abuse in its quantum has shifted from the political platform or scene and has moved to business and the workplace. There is a lot of stuff going on in businesses, in factories, in mines. And what has happened is that the central figure in all this is the arrival of China. Now, the point I want to make is that in the late early 2000s, the late 90s, the early 2000s, to about 2010, 2015, actually up to about 2010, the Western capitals and the Bretton Woods, IMF, World Bank had a lot of sway on the development story of sub-Saharan Africa, and in a way, in their text, the issues of human rights, democracy, were fairly embedded, and they used to assert some pressure. That crescendo has been lost, and it has been lost just because there has been this geopolitical shift. China has taken hold of the extractive world and the processing. What we seem to see as the hegemony between China and the US, in real sense, is playing in Africa, in African democracy, African lives. So today, African governments, by the way, really seriously only care if there is really some direct threat to power. And one way that threat now manifests is in control of capital. African presidents have become very rich people, you know, by virtue of being presidents. On their pay slips, they may parade, you know, flipsy pay figures.
So as you bring it back to Uganda, where is the threat of Eddie Mutwe to the state? What
I'm saying is this, that you see, there are two things at play. We need to understand the state. We need to understand the state structure and posture. Because you see, we are dealing with a situation locally, a situation of diminishing civic space. But you need to map out the stakeholders. You know, you are not going to say you are claiming back democracy or you're claiming back civic space when you do not, and when you have failed to actually map out who the protagonists are. So in our case, as you insist that I bring it back home, as we call for more activism, for me, I would like to see an expansion of the front. I want to see trade unions. I want to see labor leaders. I want to see churches. I want to see all these other movements join this debate or discourse. Because it has become so difficult, so dangerous to only leave it to a small pedestal of professionals, you know, the lawyers, the activists, because if we can't do that, we are stuck. We are stuck with this.
And until we see them,
and
until we see those entities responding or coming to the forefront of advocacy against some of these vices that are growing and mushrooming in our country, then we still have a long journey to go. Honorable, you join us at a point where we're assessing the judiciary, its role in upholding democratic principles. The NRM just alone last week has held polls. There's lots of issues that have mushroomed out of those polls, a lot of discrepancies, people not accepting the results, and again we're seeing mostly of these that depict what we usually see when the election cycle is done and dusted. People not accepting that they've lost and hitting the corridors of the judiciary to find solace and you know, resonance to what is happening. So it begs the question, with what we are saying, is the judiciary ready to partake of its mantra in order to resolve some of these issues?
Well, is the judiciary ready? I think the fact that we have a duly constituted judiciary, you can say it is ready to hear any dispute that is brought before them. The issue is what is provided for in the Constitution, because they say the judiciary shall be independent, the judiciary shall provide substantive justice, not looking at technicalities, the judiciary shall provide justice, not looking at my social background, those things. And when you take a matter to court, how does it end? Certainly, I want to say on the bench, there are some men and women who are up to the task, but there are also men and women who are not up to the task. Because I have been there, I have seen that what is provided for in the Constitution justice shall not be delayed, cases taking many years to be heard. Who accesses justice? It is that one who can afford a very good lawyer or the best lawyers. And in our circumstances, there are few Ugandans who can afford that. Going to where we are, for instance, under NRM. Under NRM, currently we are holding internal party elections. We have within the party provisions for dispute resolution, where if you have an issue, you go to put in your petition. That internal dispute resolution mechanism may not, in some instances it has helped, in some instances it has not. And people run to court. When they run to court, of course, that is, you've got to obey the rules. In most cases, political petitions are civil in nature. You've got to adhere to the rules of engagement. It takes some time. It involves service, really scheduling, in some instances, mediation. If it cannot be resolved, you go before the judge, and the judge determines the issues that we are raised. Of course, as a person who has been in this arena for some time, I can authoritatively say some people have gotten justice from the judiciary when they take their petitions to court, others have not. Particularly when the ruling party has gotten interest, either the interest that the petitioner must lose, or the interest that the petitioner must win. There is something that goes behind the curtains, and in a way you find a judge delivering an influenced decision. What we are talking here are not just either blackmailing the judiciary. These are realities that we have seen. And we would pray that this comes to an end, because when I go to a court of justice, I expect that I am going to be before an impartial court, an impartial tribunal, and I expect to receive justice from it.
And those are the realities according to the rule of law. But the realities we're facing as a country today, let's talk about the impunity of some of our leaders. For example, the CTF, with how he has been responding to different cases, the most recent one of Eddie Mutwe, and he seems to have impunity. Neither his chief commander, neither the other entities that are supposed to uphold him for his actions are coming out rightly. So if they're not coming out against him, and yet he has already given us a short list of other people that he's going to be teaching this Runyankore.
I have actually declared that I should disqualify myself from making any comment on the CBI, because I think it's not worth my comment.
Okay.
It's not worth my comment.
All right.
And other people can go on and talk about him, but I believe that's not an area that...
All right. As we bring this conversation to a close, what would be your closing remarks on the subject matter, the role of the judiciary as we're heading towards another electoral cycle?
Certainly they play a very critical role, because many disputes come up. You'll find a position where, like, it is one position, there are 5 or 6 candidates. And some of these are highly connected. They engage the state, the state, and there are disruptions, there is rigging, there is, name it, like what happened in Kawempe. Supposing Honorable Narukora had lost, he would have a very beautiful case before courts of law. So we would want a judiciary that would look at the facts and the law and deliver justice without necessarily...
To lead to your closing remarks.
I really think the judiciary has an opportunity, especially if they look back at precedences that have been set. There have been cases that have seen the light of day and have had huge jurisprudential value in our constitutional and system and rule of law. The Semgere case, Pesije, there are a number. So I just call upon courage and judicial activism.
All right. Aaron Kiza, your closing remarks.
The judiciary plays an outsized role in ensuring that the country gains democracy. When you look at the role played by the Kenyan judiciary specifically, and the legal fraternity, in not only bringing an end to the Moi political dictatorship, but also ensuring that a culture of civic activism takes root in Kenya, then you get to know what the kind of role judiciary and the legal fraternity can play in entrenching democratic processes in a country. Think of Malawi, think of Botswana, think of South Africa. South Africa is also a flowering example of what a steady judiciary can do to enhance the democratic temperature of a country. So it's very central, it's at the heart of a democratic society, and they are privileged to be members of the judiciary, and that privilege comes from the citizens of Uganda, and the citizens of Uganda should be respected. Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your submissions. We are waiting to see some of the recommendations that have been shared on this level becoming a reality through the corridors of the judiciary as we are into yet another electoral cycle as a country. This discussion being put to bed, we pick up yet another right after this break. Do stay with us.